Hello boys and girls, Dragonflow here. So lately I've been coming across the subject of yoga and sleeping or having sex with your students. So I'm a bit on two minds on the subjects. I know there's a lot of yoga teachers, they do it purposely to sleep with their student, and they take their kind of authority as a guru or as a yoga master, as a teacher, as an exploitation to have sex with their students. And I think this is completely wrong, mainly because a lot of people that come to yoga come for healing purposes, psychological as well as physical. And if your objective is to try and have sex with your students, then this is lost on them. Now, yoga is one of those things that's actually giving people faith in humanity again. So you don't want to take it to a point where your students lose faith in you because all you're trying to do is sleep with them, and you start getting that reputation also as a teacher that that's all you want to do and that's all you want to get from yoga is to sleep with your students. Now, it's not to say that if you have a very special connection with a person that's in your class and a relationship flourishes, which is some of the cases with some yoga teachers I've heard of, I don't think that this is necessarily wrong. I don't think that you should abstain from cultivating a healthy relationship from somebody that participates in your class. But then I feel that the relationship sort of transcends the whole student-teacher relationships, and then sort of kind of flourishes more into like a boyfriend-girlfriend or eventually husband-wife type of relationship. And so I don't think one should deprive himself of seeing somebody that he cares about because it's a student, or somebody should deprive herself of somebody that they care about because the person is their teacher, and so on and so forth. Now, in yoga, there's this whole idea of brahmacharya, which is abstinence from sex. But I think the great gurus, if you will, they weren't talking so much about abstaining from sex. They were talking more about abstaining from negative sex and like kind of horrible energy transfer in sex. So if you're having sex just kind of as if you're going to the washroom, it's meaningless, it's garbage, then obviously this is not what yoga is about, yeah? Because in yoga, you're cultivating energy and you're transferring energy into your body, and obviously you're transferring it with people. And when you're touching somebody or making love to somebody, this is when you're clearly, your transfer of energy is at its highest. So if you're just kind of having sex or trying to receive sex as this idea that I have to go to the washroom and take a shit, then I don't believe that as a yoga teacher, this is what we should be aiming at. So, should you have sex with your students? It kind of depends if you're kind of on the same page, but I would actually avoid it. Number one, I would avoid it on a spiritual way because they look up to you and they're looking for a certain guidance from you, and sometimes sex could kind of corrupt that whole thing, yeah? And then number two is, let's not forget that as a teacher, you're also running a business, yeah? You're a business person, like it or not. If you're a starving yoga teacher, well, your business is not doing well, that's one thing, but it's still a business. And if you're a prosperous yoga teacher, then your yoga business is doing well. But either way, you're in the business of yoga, yeah? And so sleeping with your students is bad for business. It's bad for that student that you slept with if eventually you're planning to have sex with other students, because she's going to lose trust in you, she's going to leave, and so on and so forth. And it's bad to attract other students because then as a teacher you're dogmatized as somebody that just wants to hit on and sleep on with his students. Now, I know for some big teachers, they could still make a substantial amount of money and sleep with their students or whatever, and they kind of make it look like, that's okay. And I've even read articles about yoga teachers defending the idea that they sleep with their students. Really, if you ask my honest opinion, they're just writing these articles to cover up their tracks, so kind of not to end up like John Friend ended up. But we must always be weary about who we want to sleep with and who we sleep with, because there is this energy transfer, yeah? And don't use sex as like notches under your belt, like I slept with X amount of people and that makes me a better person. That's really not what yoga is about. Again, sex is a transfer of energy, and so you want to cultivate a positive energy with yourself and with the person you're with. I'm sure you've noticed, most of you have noticed, you're old enough if you're watching this video to have noticed, sometimes you have sexual relationships that leave you very empty. And that's because it was geared at a very animalistic part of your system, if you will. And then there's some sexual relationships that leave you kind of invigorated and full, and this is kind of more of the sexual relationships you want to cultivate. And you can only cultivate this if you really trust and believe in the person that you're having sex with. And I sometimes feel that being a yoga teacher, some people look up to you without really knowing who you are. And frankly, I wouldn't encourage somebody having sex with me or with a yoga teacher if you don't really know what you're going into. If you're going into it with that kind of groupie mentality that is just like, oh, I love my yoga teacher, such a great guy, but on the private side of it, you don't know really anything about this person. So just be wary. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not one to say what's right or what's wrong. Just be careful, be wary, and make sure whatever sexual relationships you are cultivating is that you're looking more for something sustainable and long-term than something that's not going to hurt you emotionally. And as a student and as a teacher, when you're dealing with sex, you know that maybe you're straying into a pathway that's not necessarily positive. So if you're planning to kind of take people's emotions on a string and then just kind of let them loose, it's very safe to say you're not practicing yoga, you're just using yoga as a tool to corrupt people and to corrupt situations. If you do end up in a romantic relationship with one of your students or with one of your teachers, and it's something that you both want to work on and pursue, and it's kind of pure and loyal, then, I mean, there's no great guru that could tell you otherwise. Just make sure that your intentions are pure, you know what you're getting into, and that you're not being exploited by someone who just wants to use yoga to have sex with multiple partners and so on. Because there's a lot of these guys out there right now, and they're not really doing positive for the yoga community. So that's it. Those are my views on yoga and sex with your students and so on and so forth. Have a nice day. Namaste.